Be it as it may, destiny and death are like two sides of the same coin. Not because we're hurtling towards oblivion, but because, ultimately, death will have its due, whether or not we eke out something significant in the grand scheme of eternity. Or, if you're DreamWorks, you start a treasure hunt. So, let me ask you this. What would you do if you were given one wish? One wish with the power of infinity and beyond in the palm of your hands. Welcome to Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, a movie that entangles the titular cat and his friends together with their adversaries often enough to create a conflict that constantly hangs over their heads as they seek their greatest prize. For inside the ominous dark forest lies the legendary Last Wish, a cosmic power that could grant anything they ever wanted. Yet, for this fairy tale, it's not only about a power that could end up in the wrong hands, but about the race to obtain that ultimate power, and what it could mean for those searching for it. This is a fairy tale, perhaps the perfect kind, where morality and adventure combine into one epic story. One does not simply walk into Mordor, nor does one simply risk their lives searching for some mythical power that might be fictitious. No, it takes a certain level of adventure, motivation, perhaps even desperation for someone to seek out such a dangerous goal. What I appreciate here is that DreamWorks doesn't scoot around the problem. In fact, they drive the cast towards it while building up their story arcs. Because, as with any fairy tale, there's an active goal that shapes its moral lesson, as well as a specific setting that brings it all together. For these two respectively, we have the wishing star and the dark forest. The enormous power of the star collided into the forest, transforming an entire ecosystem into a massive vessel of chaotic magic. And it doesn't take long for its secrets to spread around, as well as a certain map. With this map, the wielder is led towards the heart of the dark forest, where its amazing power lies. But those who take hold of the map are subject to its side effects, not the least of which is altering the very landscape as if to protect itself from treasure hunters. But this is not just for the sake of causing conflict. Our cast of characters do enough of that themselves. Such selfish aims will naturally bring about conflict. Fitting that our cast of treasure hunters all have something to prove, or something to lose. You wouldn't consider that in a DreamWorks movie, but if they can make the Kung Fu Panda trilogy, they can certainly add intensity and stakes to a Puss in Boots movie. Any fairy tale will have powerful personalities with larger-than-life attitudes, but The Last Wish also gives us character goals and desires that feel grounded and realistic. Not just what they want at a surface level, but what they really want, true to their core. If you've played Dungeons & Dragons, you would know that for an adventure to feel really special, you gotta have some quirks in your characters. And at the head of this unhinged hunt for the map is the namesake character, Puss in Boots. Crafty, courageous, cunning cat in a hat, with a reputation for dashing, daring, swashbuckling, and an immortal heroic status. Literally. But he's not the only feline in the fight. Kitty Softpaws, infamous thief with all of the dexterity, patience, and Spanish sass you could ever hope to bear. Speaking of bears, we have Goldilocks and the Three Bears. This dysfunctional squadron of would-be burglars use brute force coupled with a natural human savviness to work their way out of some problems. The human-beast relationship here has some unique friction, but sometimes it's not about the brain, but how you use your body. Or the reverse when it comes to the hateful Jack Horner. Head of an industrial plant, owner of several magic items, and with a heart completely dark, he's ruthless, impatient, and forceful. The worst of the worst. Funny thing is, while there is an obvious big bad guy here, the rest of the cast, more or less, are in it for themselves without being as malicious as the BBEG. It creates this kind of narrative where we jump around each character, but it doesn't slow down or feel like it's filler. Rather, we get just the right amount of time to familiarize ourselves with each character, understanding that they're all equally involved in the plot, without pulling another down. Obviously, it's a race, and in a race, there's a first and last place. But in this kind of story, no one feels left behind, which gives us the time and space to understand. If there's one thing I've always noticed when it comes to adventures, the adventurers, regardless of moral alignment, will always want something to satiate their thirst, their drive to attain their ultimate goal. And while the map is the primary goal of our hunters, we also see just how unsatisfied they are with each failed attempt to gain hold of the map or each time the map swaps hands. Without certain victory, they unravel. In most stories, the hero is a keystone, the bedrock which the conflict hinges upon. Now, what happens when there's no clear hero in the story? Kitty is a thief, so are the bears and Goldilocks, and Jack is just straight up evil. Puss is the most heroic of the bunch, being a sort of Robin Hood for the people, but as heroic as he is, he's also quite vain and full of himself, very confident to the point of thinking himself immortal. And who could blame him? He's a true cat with 9 lives, a pseudo-immortality that has saved his butt from death multiple times. Until now. Because there's actually one more hunter, and some dainty wish isn't what he wants. It's the cat in the hat in his sights, and he's feeling hungry. Giving any of these folks the wish would seem like a bad idea, and depending on interpretation, you'd be correct. Fortunately, the map is aware of this and responds back. You see, what makes the journey through the dark forest so intimidating and so troublesome is in the joined nature of its chaotic power and the map that leads to the last wish. The forest is separate from the world, an entirely different realm of its own, and inside it, whomever touches the map actually alters the entire ecosystem down to its very roots, literally. The very key to the last wish also presents challenges in and of itself. In any fairy tale, we follow our characters through their decisions and actions and learn what makes them tick and how it leads to their motivations. This is true for all stories of all kinds, but within a fairy tale, the greater lesson tends to hang around the characters' heads, sometimes comically, sometimes seriously. As a thief, Kitty Softpaws deals in treachery and double-crossing. For all her skill though, she's all on her own, very distrustful even of Puss, whom she had a relationship with before. If anything, especially of Puss. The map takes this to the next level by unfurling these 3 obstacles, all jabs at her character. But if you give it some thought, DreamWorks actually cooked here. I'd hate to be Captain Obvious for a minute, but let Kitty's trials serve as the module for how the map reacts. If Never-Ending Story has taught me one thing, it's that swamps suck, and it's easy to get stuck in one. If climbing a mountain has taught me one thing, it takes one little slip for you to painfully fall back several steps, undoing your progress. And if an abyss has taught me anything, it's that it's easy to be caught up in the nothingness of its pull. Or, in this case, the loneliness of its pull. You see what I'm putting down? The map is brutally honest, with emphasis on brutal. The same happens for Puss, for as immortal as he thinks he is, he's down to his final life. 8 lives spent for the literal love of the game has made him forget that he is still mortal and vulnerable. He wouldn't have lost those lives if he wasn't, after all. But more than a mortal thinking he is immortal, it's made him arrogant. You wouldn't deny a doctor's report that you've broken your ACL. Broken? I think it's tearing. That's my fault, not Puss though. So when a wolf with a scythe shatters his self-made image of immortality in his face, it gets him running. The map knows this. It's why it creates hell right in his face, not just to suffer, but to see and actualize death itself, in body, memory, and spirit. Perhaps the most benign the map ever reacts is when Goldilocks gains possession. I mentioned before that there is a unique friction that comes with Goldilocks and the 3 bears. It's something that I noticed only after I watched The Last Wish again with my family, and this little detail got pointed out. The map stops working. It doesn't just stop working, it gives a sort of farewell to Goldilocks and the 3 bears. When they arrive at what seems to be their old home, nostalgia takes control. It's part of the name, and the bears take advantage of it. In fact, this location is literally the only obstacle that stands in their way. The terrain then doesn't change, and it is implied that it doesn't need to. It could be said that this could be their test, that they need to overcome creature comforts to get closer to the last wish. But why would the map tell them to stop? Well, for Goldilocks, it's a lesson in itself. She has everything she needs. We only get mentions of what the bears would want, but they're mainly spurred on by Goldilocks. So they take a back seat and do their best to support and encourage Goldie, who keeps her own wish secret. That said, what is her wish? It's wanting a family, a human family. It's not that Goldie doesn't love her family, there is just this disconnection that provokes that desire for a human family. Fact of the matter is, she is still human. And they're not. Even in a fairy tale, it's just how nature works. Now, the map does not make the path impossible, nor does it try to influence its holder towards a path outside their personal spectrum of morals. But it won't make getting to the wishing star any simpler, and there's only one path active at a time. This later complicates and escalates the actual journey when one path is suddenly changed to another the moment the map swaps hands. The problematic nature of the Dark Forest is poetic but straightforward, in spite of all the chaos. In practice, it establishes a journey that tests the resolve of its wielder and places questions for them to answer, as if as a response to their personal motives. It's not just to test how far they're willing to go to catch the ultimate prize. It's a mirror, reflecting the longings, yearnings, and fears of the heart. It sounds corny, but how the way that the Dark Forest works is awfully reflective of someone's personal trials. If they really want something so badly, they might need to look in themselves to see if it's truly worth it. And this unspoken theme is a conflict that runs across all of our treasure hunters. Except for two. Tagging along with Puss in Boots is a quirky little chihuahua named Perrito, and unlike the rest of the hunters, he's the most different. Outgoing and friendly, Perrito happily wades along the dangers and terrors in the hunt for the wish. And when it's his turn to touch the map, the Dark Forest reverses all of its dangers into a paradise of literal sunshine and rainbows, which Puss and Kitty don't understand. As a self-proclaimed therapy dog, Perrito is happy to help out, but more than that, as someone that is simply pure-hearted, Perrito is seemingly rewarded by the Dark Forest itself. What makes him so pure and innocent is having a sense of wonder and love that transcends a measly hunt for some piece of paper. In the movie, Perrito may seem a little crazy, but any fairy tale can tell you who's actually good and evil. A cast of morally gray characters will make the legitimately good character look like an absolute lunatic. And it is this contrast that really wakes up our hunters. Besides Jack, because he's evil. Now, Perrito is not a Mary Sue. He gets into trouble himself and doesn't have the ability to fight back as well as everyone else, nor does he transform the plot to suit himself. He's not invincible, but he's not entirely stupid or unaware either. He might lack a lot of things, but he doesn't lack in those things that truly matter: love, empathy, compassion, gratitude, and so on. It really puts into perspective perhaps how desperate and or meaningless the hunt for the wish is. It's easy to say that as the audience, we see things in a way that the characters don't. Fortunately, there's someone there, ready to remind everyone what waits for them in the end. Aloha! With this Patreon page, you not only gain access to behind-the-scenes content, but also a plethora of extra stuff for you to enjoy. 2 tiers as of now, and any and all support is appreciated. If the big bad wolf is any indicator, the great lesson of The Last Wish is death. Death will always be a driving force in someone's pursuits, not the least of which is the pursuit of the ultimate wish. Because as we know from other sources of media, the ability to wish for anything and have it instantly come to reality is a dangerous and unpredictable power. More than certain to invite death, knocking and hungry. But the price of power doesn't just appear in the form. Really? But the price of power doesn't just appear in the form of a fool's corpse, because more than physical death is the death of the character. For Puss, he's been so busy finding glory in his immortality to the point that the true fear of dying permanently makes him question what his past lives were even about. Was all the gold, the celebration, and the swashbuckling worth the loneliness and the emptiness? Is that what his identity was, as a vessel of bravery with no added substance? Was he Puss in Boots, the hero, the immortal? Or was he Puss in Boots, the cat, the person? With no sword and no lives left, he's feeling, probably for the first time, a vulnerable life. Gone is his literal immortal confidence, replaced with an individual so caught up with his weakness, he stumbles his way across danger. Goldie isn't faring better either. An entire realm has opened her eyes to the value of a living family, yet also leaving her in want for a human family. What is family to her? Those that love and support her, have been there for her for so long? Or is it something else, someone else, one that makes her feel like she's not abnormal because of who she is, a human? It's why when the bears grow weary of the hunt, she expresses her frustration, pushing them away in rejection. Kitty is faring perhaps the best, outside of Perrito. A thief is a notoriously lonely occupation that provokes distrust and secrecy. But taking this adventure along with Puss, even if first begrudgingly, has given her hope. Their one attempt at being together forever was lost due to Puss's vanity. Now, in a place where they were essentially equal to one another, even dependent on each other truly, Kitty recognizes she wouldn't need the wish to make such a bond come to light. It's been reforged and developed naturally, but it all hinges on the wish. Because the second Puss lets the fear of permanent death get to him, he reverts back to the legend, the dying immortal desperately preserving his failing reputation, which disappoints Kitty and, to an extent, us, the audience. But who can blame him? He's had the security of his lives to guard him against lords and giants, as well as the benefit of all the creature comforts that would help him feel wanted and beloved. Losing that is a scary thought. But losing people who believe in you, people who cherish you for who you are, and not because of a supposed reputation for being smart, strong, or even immortal, that is the real death at stake here. These are the costs of the hunt for the last wish, sacrifices unnecessary for the sole purpose of personal fulfillment. This is why the map reacts the way it does to each wielder. It's testing them of their bravery and character, or reminding them of what they might already have. They're not just risking their lives, they're risking friendships and families that help them get to where they are to begin with. The death of a character is one thing, but it is the demise of their bonds and their relationships, the very memory of who they were and what they could have become wiped away. That's the real heartbreaker. If it takes certain doom for us to sober up to the reality of our existence, then, like Puss, maybe we all are a little drunk on life. Near the end of the final conflict, priorities shift as the stakes become lethal. Is a map really worth a life? A family member? A chance to try again? Being confronted with their faulty pursuits of the wish, our hunters re-examine what they really want, what is most important to them. Death has threatened them each, personally. Yet, death is no villain, even just to Puss. Would you believe me if I said that death is actually trying to teach Puss in Boots? In relentless pursuit of Puss, death, in a way, is trying to help Puss understand the complete meaning of life, and the greater degrees to which he can live his last. Puss, who has thrown away his lives while always feeling empty inside, yet declaring and believing that he is immortal. That is what has frustrated Death, who has observed him for the past 8 lives. But when Death finally leaves Puss alone, his send-off is not a taunt, not some insult to bait Puss into another fight. It's an acknowledgement that Puss has finally matured. Death knows that he'll win in the end. He knows that Puss knows that now as well, and he's content with that. Death comes for us all. It's a strange realization then that death is pushing Puss, and perhaps the other characters, or even us, to live for something more than just the vanishing memories of a life wasted. For Puss, Kitty, Goldie, and even Jack, would they choose to feed into their most inborn desires through the use of the wish, knowing that it could spell the end of things that will end up more meaningful in the grand scheme of things like love, empathy, friendship, and family? Well, for Jack, that's the whole point of his subplot, but that's besides the point. Suppose any of the other three parties get the wish and follow through. What's next? 9 more lives for Puss, someone to trust for Kitty, and a new family for Goldilocks. Despite what they've been through and what they've learned about themselves, could there truly be a conclusion worthy of all of the character development just moments before? Or are we actually going back to square one? Just for these characters to experience the same pains and struggles to bring them back to their first steps within the dark forest, searching for a magic power that could grant them their deepest wish? Could a wish truly fix everything? This is a fairy tale, and fairy tales were always meant to teach the great lessons and purposes of life, even if through caution and fear. At the end of this fairy tale, we see that, at the ultimate finale of such a desperate hunt, what's mattered has always been in front of our protagonists. Not some legend of the past or a new world with new people, but the love we can share and receive from others around us, the bonds we make through trials and tribulations. No wish needed. What are wishes for? For us to dream aimlessly? Or simply an idealism that we could work to achieve? Is it truly worth setting aside what we have now? Or is it all parts of one life, a life well lived? Arguably, a life well lived is a life not spent searching for empty wishes. If ingratitude and arrogance are what drives us towards a meaningless end, then surely we could be more grateful, more humble with what we have. Perhaps that is what life is meant for. And when death comes, well, we can rest easy.